We are live. Welcome to the DAM Show, the Digital Art Market Show. I am Roger Dickerman, RD, here with two very special guests, the featured guests of the day, none other than John Gerrard and Alejandro Cartagena. Gentlemen, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Very good to be back, Roger.
It is wonderful to have you back. And John, I mentioned off air, doing this for the first time live. How about that? It feels like it should be the seventh time, but it is indeed the first. And here we are. And Alejandro, I'm going to pick on you because
Sure.
we have a multi-year backstory where we've been able to be on air, both pre-recorded and also live, and talk about some wonderful artists and artworks. And so I'm going to pick on you. I'm going to share a screen. It's going to be a fellowship site, your recent exhibition, but please do set the stage for today's show.
For sure. Well, thank you, Roger, for having us today in your show. We've done a bunch of these. I think 23, I think, was the first one, or 24. Yeah. What it's been a hard couple of years. It's been a really interesting moment for digital art at large. I think there are compounding efforts that have been happening. You're one of the most consistent supporters and believers of the space. We have things that have been, like I say, compounding, and what started last year in Basel, Miami, really condensated, I think, the effort for letting people know that digital art is a really important sector in contemporary art. As I've read here and there, we need not separate them, but that's the nature of the beast. But I think with what the whole group of galleries and platforms who have been participating in 010, I think collectively we've been putting ourselves in front of the contemporary art world and shouting out that this is something very important to pay attention to, and that we know how to do it well and we know how to present it well. And there are artists who have been pushing ideas with this medium for years, decades, and it's time to give them a spotlight. And 010 has kind of been that, and we're honored to be part of the whole team. I honestly feel that we're all together in this, and we couldn't be more delighted to have the opportunity to present John's work in Basel. John has been at the forefront of these technologies and using these technologies in ways that are thoughtful and caring about the ideas that they can carry. And of the things that Fellowship does well, I think, is work with artists that have those different doors or layers, in that, yes, the technology is important and it's cutting edge, and what John's work does is at the cutting edge of technology, but at the same time is at the forefront of talking about things that matter to the everyday person: climate change, our changing world, and then having a third layer, which is showing objects, digital objects, which is it's a kind of an oxymoron, but having that capability of showing artists that attract people, not only because of the technology or what's being talked about, and or also by the objects that are being presented. So John's work has the three layers, and we'll talk about this, but the amount of conversations or different conversations that we had in Basel was really beautiful. Some came because they're instantly attracted to, wow, this is such an urgent body of work. We need more work that talks about these themes. People who are absolutely curious about the quality of the objects that were being presented. People who didn't understand that this wasn't a real video, that it was a simulation. I mean, you had all these different layers of conversations, and for me, that's a symptom of a really mature and important body of work that John has created.
Maybe a great place to start with this then, John. So this work,
Mhm.
which we'll go into each one and connect the dots among them. But the earliest of those works is 2017.
Mm.
And yet
Yeah.
your origin is before, obviously,
Mm.
2017. Maybe you could speak
Mm.
to that, set the stage for
Yeah.
this moment.
Yeah, it's always good to start at the start, as they say. So, yeah, I think kind of importantly, and I've told this fairly consistently, but it's kind of a sort of an important narrative for me is really, I grew up in Ireland, and still located in Ireland, but entering university in the UK in 1994. So I was born in 74. Age 20, I pitched up in university in this beautiful little art school, the Ruskin, which is embedded in Oxford University. It's a part of the university, and getting this university card and swiping it, and like suddenly I was in this room of computers, that just stretched away because it's a university, so it has all that power and all those resources which art schools really didn't have in 1994. And so my young brain got on Netscape Navigator in 1994. I mean, it had just been released that year. It's literally the year it had been released. First publicly available browser. I think it was previously Mosaic, and then it sort of transferred across, if I remember correctly, or let's say developed. And I was studying sculpture, and somehow very quickly came across the idea of 3D scanning. In 1994. So in a weird way, it all begins there with this idea of the. I kind of began to think of the 3D scan as an image object, because it takes the idea of the photograph and collapses it into the idea of the sculpture. They begin to kind of lose distinction. So, to cut kind of a long story short, I, followed that path through an MFA in art and technology in Chicago, but really got places when I did a Master of Science in the computer science department in Dublin, in Trinity. So it's basically art and computer science. That's how it came about. But in between, and I actually talked to Alejandro about this, we, mid 90s was a lot of, it was basically like house music. Like house music was the thing in the UK. And we would drive from Oxford up to places like Manchester. And I remember very, very vividly standing on the floor of the Hacienda saying, like, if technology does this to music, what's it going to do to art? And I made a commitment right there and then to really the computer as my instrument then, my tool then. And, I'm still here, 30 years later. And, I think maybe I'm going to talk about the art token, as I call it, like a little bit later, because that is, I think, one of the things that's probably going to deliver the great potential, or is delivering and, will deliver the great potential of technology for art going forward. And I think that's one thing I'm seeing very vividly in Basel at 010 with fellowship. But maybe before I do that, I might go into the works themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And why don't we do that? And I'll pull the screen back up, and who better than you, John? Take us back to 2017.
Sure. So 17, I was approached by Channel 4 in the UK, television station, a national television station, to actually maybe stay up at the. Do you have it there? You could. What if you can go in actually if you want? Yeah.
Go down.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah. So if you keep the top image, I can talk about it just as well with the top image. But the Channel 4 approached me to respond to Earth Day, and I did so by considering the site of the first big oil strike in world history, which happened in Spindletop in Texas in 1901. And so that is this piece here. It's called Western Flag. It's sited in Spindletop as it is now. And the flag tries to recall what's called the carbon dioxide legacy, because a lot of the oil that was released, from Spindletop in Texas between 1901 and let's say the 50s when it was exhausted, a lot of the carbon dioxide is still in the atmosphere. It's it's an invisible gas, so it sits in the atmosphere, and it produces climate heating. So it's like an invisible legacy of the 20th century. For me, Western Flag is about, like, in a way, the 20th century haunting the 21st century, through its legacy of carbon dioxide. And it's a sort of complex thread, because I'm a great beneficiary of the 20th century oil boom. I had a lot of mobility, a lot of, just pleasure in it, so this is part of my legacy. I can't kind of disentangle myself from it. But I showed Western Flag on television, Earth Day 2017, as an intervention in the network. So you're watching TV and boom, it switches off, and you get this for like 30 seconds, and then you get your like standard programming back. So it was like an old-fashioned TV hack for 24 hours, which I have to say was great. And then it went around the world as like big LEDs on the landscape, places like Desert X in California and these kind of places. But if you go back up to the top image for a moment, so if you look on the right-hand side, there's a piece called Flare. And Flare really grew out of meeting an activist and an artist in front of Western Flag at big climate change conference in Madrid in 2019, a guy called Uli Losi, who said to me, it's all very well to talk about the past, he said, but really I live in Tonga. He said, we need to talk about the present. And he said, right now, he said, the ocean is burning. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he meant that, like, the ocean, you have invisible heat waves under the ocean, which are enormously destructive of ocean life, but also produce extraordinary, storm cycles. And so I made this piece for him. Flare is a sort of a flag made from flames, a little bit like a gas flare, because in English, a flare is both like a flare, as in a gas flare, but it can also be a distress flare. It can mean both things. So this is a flare for the burning ocean. And then the final piece on the far left, so that's basically 17, middle, 22 on the right. And on the left-hand side is a piece called Standard, which grew out of the musician Bono calling me and asking could he put a work into the Sphere for their big residency in 23 in the Sphere. And he originally wanted to put the central work, Western Flag, but in the end I made him a more hopeful flag, which is Standard, which is a water vapor flag. And I think of it as a flag for shared atmosphere. If we think of the atmosphere as a commons, there is no border, between one country and the next in the atmosphere. It's a common zone. So it's a sort of hopeful flag for a common area. And weirdly enough, despite making them, 17, 23, 22, they had never been shown all together. And when I connected, especially with one of the founders of Fellowship, Neil Hutchinson, originally, it became clear that, we really should show this as a triptych for the first time. So this is what happened in Basel.
Alejandro, from your perspective, when does this all come onto your radar, and what's your introduction to the work?
Yeah, I mean, I've known John's work for a while. Let's say first as a meme. Western Flag was something that circulated the internet for so many years without a name, which is, I think, there's a philosopher, a contemporary philosopher, that talks about there are very few images that have that power of reproduction, and those are the contemporary masterpieces, because very few command that, digital reproduction, and Western Flag is one of those works. So I knew the work without associating it to John's work, but then when we started considering what we would take to Basel, the immediate I would say thought was, it has to talk about the current condition that we're living in right now. And John's work was at the top. It's very sound in terms of using, and this is, I think, one of our for our whole digital space and for digital art at large, is coercing these tools that are used for dominance and control, and how do we revert that into an aesthetic and poetic, as John has said before, as a poetic gesture. How do we make poetry with the most important thing that we as a society worldwide share, which is computing power? And just thinking about that, I remember interviewing him earlier this year. I'm like, holy shit, sorry for my French, but he's absolutely right. Like, we really need to pay attention to this poetry of the tools of contemporary life. So it was a no-brainer. And the idea that the three works had not been shown together, there was something also, you want to present as a gallery work that is absolutely, at the sophistication that the rest of the contemporary art world is at. But then there's something about the possibility that an artwork contains a narrative. And I think that opening that little door makes people connect a lot more with contemporary art. And it's not easy. Contemporary art kind of like doesn't want narrative, doesn't want those stories, because then it's too didactic or whatever. But there's a level of sophistication that can be used in order to create a very important narrative about the world we live in. And I think that was, for us as a team, we're like, yes, it has these traits, it's important work. And of course, I mean, John is don't take this the wrong, but you're a legend.
Thank you.
In the digital art space. So we're like, yeah, this has to happen. And yeah.
Alejandro, you've actually made me realize that I kind of skipped over something that's kind of important.
Go for it.
Which is that, one of the things that happened in when I kind of went into the computer science environment with this kind of new media masters, was I learned of the game engine. I learned about the game engine. And I have this funny theory that the game engine is, the most important and most neglected contemporary art space in a funny way. It's just like so interesting and so absent. And I think maybe the thing that will change that is the emergence of WebGL, like web graphics language, where the engine's in the browser. But, when I was in computer science environment in Trinity, people started saying to me, John, why don't you bring your 3D scans into a game engine? I was like, I don't know what that is. And then when I learned what it was, I was like, oh, that's the only place I want to be. That was basically 2000. And I've been there 26 years now. So, but yeah, just to really elaborate for the audiences, each of these is a 365-day solar simulation, which means that we base the light conditions on the local conditions in that place, like in Texas or in Tonga or in Nevada. So the sun rises and travels at the speed of the Earth's turn. So it takes 24 hours to get through night and day, and 365 to get through spring. Winter, spring, summer, autumn. So these are 365-day annual sims, each one. So in that sense, there's another layer, which is that we're actually working with the physics of these different elements, like the physics of burn, the physics of smoke, the physics of steam. So these are kind of consistently unique things, which makes public presentations so compelling, because you're basically seeing a new world constantly. They're broadly similar, but they're constantly renewed by the core logic. But I'm just chiming. Yep.
Yeah. And John, it would be amazing if you would talk a little bit about the construction of the works, because sometimes people don't understand that you were and your team, the studio, that you were painstakingly creating every little showing of smoke.
Well, I mean, it's funny because sometimes I read articles and people are like, Western flag is based on 10,000 pictures, or and it's like, oh, that sounds like it was automated, but these are hand-built worlds, so really one of the most effective ways to think about a world. And remember, a game engine is a world-building machine. It's a machine that builds worlds. That's what the engine is. It's a reality-producing machine within, let's say, the virtual. But so the best way to think of an engine is kind of as a stage. You take an image, you lay it flat. That's a stage. And then on the stage, you place props. So everything you see in that central image is a hand-built representation of things that we found in Texas. Now, because it's an engine, we didn't really use 3D scanning because you're not really getting the kind of resources you need to use in the engine. So it's all built by hand. And then the foliage and all this stuff. And then finally, the smoke simulation was a combination of a kind of a volumetric smoke sim and a fluid dynamic sim. And anyway, I mean, it really was about a year's work for about 5 people to make that central piece. So there was nothing easy or automated about it. And they went into the world. And as Alejandro pointed out, it was released on TV. We actually put it on TV for 24 hours. We live streamed it to YouTube for a week, for a week, 7 days. And we actually put it physically into London, into Somerset House on an LED for a day. So it was like a week on YouTube. No, it was, anyway, I can't remember exactly, but it was like kind of the steps. Maybe it was a month to YouTube, something like that. A day on TV, a week in Somerset House, and a month to YouTube. But as Alejandro said, particularly after Donald Trump was elected, people sampled it as a kind of a protest meme, as people felt, he began to pull out of climate mitigation policies. And, some people felt that he was, in a way, attacking a very core sense of America itself, because there's a kind of a hint of America in the flag, not too strong, a hint of it. But anyway, it was released in 2017. It's an edition of, and Roger, I know this is a market focus, so it's edition of 4 and 2 artist proofs. And we had some success. It was collected by people like Francois Pinault, the big luxury goods titan. People like Thyssen-Bornemisza and, Francesca Thyssen-Bornemisza. So these very extraordinary collectors. But they all collected it as paper-based. It was basically a USB stick, a proof, a signed piece of paper, an online archive, and they acquired it as software authenticated on paper. So, at the right moment, I want to talk about this pulse when we added tokens to historic software.
I'm extremely interested in that conversation, but if I could ask you one question prior to going there, take us to the 010 floor, because you alluded to it earlier. But let's break this topic open. I imagine people walking over, and this question for both of you, maybe we'll start with John, people walking over and looking at this work. I mean, what are all the various interpretations of what these people believe that the work is in the first place? And then how do you describe the game engine to them?
All right. So let's start at the start. So, I'm really an artist of the public domain. That's my thing. I am happiest on the street. I mean, literally, put me on the street. I'm now getting increasingly happiest on the phone. I mean, my focus, my piece for LACMA right now is a phone-based artwork. I think the phone is a very, very important, LACMA, it's a piece called Spirits, which Roger, we should do a series. We should do a feature on spirits next time, but we'll focus on 010 for now. But if you hop back, so I'm an artist of the public domain. So, when Fellowship and John Gerrard came together, with Trevor Paglen and with Eli Scheinman to assemble this vision, I, especially with Trevor, said, okay, let's do a public art presentation here. Let's not really approach this as a booth. So it doesn't really look as a booth because it wasn't really a booth. It was a absolutely beautiful freestanding wall. And I'm going to be like really nerdy here, so you just have to forgive me. But do you see there's a little gap under the wall? Like it kind of floats a little bit. So, it starts there, like all the other walls in the whole room hit the floor. And I was like, I cannot have my wall hit the floor. So we had it stop and we stepped it in and we painted a little black, little shadow gap in. So, our wall floats, first of all. And then we painted that wall with an earth-based paint, which I called Mother, basically. It's earth and pigment and organic binder. And we were there 5 days before everybody else arrived, like loving the Mother. We were like painting the wall with this like amazing earth-based paint. And so when you put a light on this wall, nothing comes out of it. I mean, it just goes in and nothing comes out. So, and I wanted it to be like a landscape almost. And Alejandro will probably chime with this, where I was like, can we bring a landscape into this setting? Yeah. So it's very warm, it's very earth-like. And then we touched earlier on this idea that the game engine is a piece of war technology. It's actually derived from, originally from, flight simulations, war games. So there's a sort of a weird coldness to it. I mean, it's not cinema. It has no relationship to the organic whatsoever. It has no relationship to film. It's a very cold medium, the virtual, in a weird way. Very kind of like, we soften it through our production methods, but it's very clinical, I would say. So then we partnered with an amazing supplier who brought in Create LED, brought in these beautiful LEDs, like high resolution LEDs that are completely matte. Yeah. Like they actually looked a bit like paper. So you're kind of looking at them going, is that a photograph? Because they're not actually moving that fast. Like particularly the middle one, Western Flag, is quite sluggish. And then the ultra high resolution. So it's kind of hovering between a picture, a photograph, or almost cinema. And then, sorry, I'll finish in a minute. Obviously I'm a bit nerdy about this, but I worked with an extraordinary fabricator, Jacob Ilera, and we've been kind of, in a way, responding to the legacy of Donald Judd for a long time. So, we kind of thought we're going to bring in these voids, these minimalist voids, and they were basically metal boxes. But instead of being empty, we would fill them with the algorithm. So if you came to the side, you would see like really quite a substantial object, like this sort of scale, floating from the wall, stepped away from the wall and floating from the wall, and then filled with these very beautiful LEDs. So I let Alejandro fill it in from there, but it was extremely formal. I mean, it was extremely formal. And I think, Alejandro, for a lot of people, they couldn't quite work out what it was.
And that was, that's the beautiful tension that the work created. Like I said at the beginning, it was the confrontation of the object and then the confrontation of the subject matter. It was so beautiful to witness. People would stand there for minutes just trying to grasp it, like what they're looking at, trying to understand, because sometimes, as John mentioned before, this is a 365-day simulation. So if you would go early during the day, it would be like daytime. But if you would go at 6 or 7 p.m., the lights started to go down on the simulation and it started to get dark, and people were like, how is this happening? So everything was interacting with the people who were visiting the booth and the public art presentation, as John has put it. I think one important thing to highlight is that it was thought of as this public artwork, and that's a challenge. Like when one thinks of a art fair, you think of a booth, and that was really hard to translate. And we're very thankful for John pushing us with the paint idea, and it really manifests as a public work. And that was so, like, it was. I don't know about you, John, but when those screens lit up and the simulations were happening, it was like, yes, like this is it. Like this is the vision of digital art that we all want to, encounter. It becomes interactive, even though it's not an interactive work. It becomes interactive because of it's an object. And here's actually a question to throw back to you, John. This is like, I think one of the biggest problems of video art at large is that it doesn't have materiality, or one thinks that it doesn't have materiality. And yet you were able to convey that with these objects, these floating images. And when did you start thinking about video as object?
Well, Roger, can you control the windows here?
Sure can.
Can you just put johngerrard.net in the window for a minute? Maybe make a new window or whatever we want to do it. Yeah. So Gerrard, JOHNGRR. Is there too many R's?
I think let's see.
1 second.
GERRARD.net, right?
Yeah.
And we're back.
So if you just go down to the bottom, maybe kind of slowly. So, I've been doing this really kind of a long time, and the LEDs started to come out around about 2011. Before that, I'd been working with sort of major LEDs. So, projections. So if you come up a little bit slower, yeah, keep going. And the thing about a projection is you're in a dark room. So actually that see the on the left hand side, there's like a 3 figures, just up a little bit. Yeah, that's the first time I used an LED. That was in Manchester International Festival, a piece called Infinite Freedom Exercise, and it was the first time I used an LED on the landscape, basically. So, and that was like a huge breakthrough. Where it was like, oh, we don't need to be in a dark room, but just jump back for a moment, please, and then just go up to the top. And actually, the best one to open is probably Western Flag. So if you come down, and yeah, it's this beautiful, towards the bottom, the kind of 3/4 wall, one more across to the right. Yeah, that one. And just choose any one of those. Yeah, so,
wow.
The light emitting diode, in the landscape. And actually, if you go left on those pictures, yeah, one more, and one more. This was our like training zone. This is the desert outside Palm Springs, and you're bringing a light emitting wall into this setting as part of what's called Desert X, and you have this completely unexpected publics, which is, incredible. But B, because they just stop their car on the highway and walk across the desert, like completely unexpected art publics, which is, I love, But then, like, we just honed a craft of this. It's literally a craft. I mean, I say to people, now, they say, okay, what do we have to do to install your work? And I say, like, don't laugh. I say, but the person really probably to look at is light and space minimalists. I think probably look at James Turrell the closest. I mean, this is figurative, not non-figurative, but we have taken a lot of lessons from James Turrell about how to install digital work. So if you go back to the fellowship page again, which I fear we might have closed, but I think it's probably pretty easy to find. Yeah, that is kind of taking at least 15 years of kind of craft development, and then like a very strong dose of Terrell, to try and get to that place. So yeah.
And Alejandro, from your perspective, displaying work, just even speaking about the instantiations of 010, we've seen you now put together a very interesting, a separate triptych, a triptych of presentations, starting with Holly Herndon and Matt Dryhurst, and then continuing forward with Sugwen in Hong Kong, and then now here in Switzerland. How are you thinking from that broader perspective, doing something unique each time, right? Not really that many similarities among the three.
Yeah, I mean, that's is that, I mean, we want to be able to be the space where the artist thinks of, this is what I want, this is the dream presentation of the work, even if it's for like an art fair. We want to do that for them. Normally, again, as I was saying, when you think of an art fair, you're thinking of booths. You're thinking of how do we make the best out of this real estate that we have to sell the more amount of work that we can. But somehow we've been lucky to work with artists, including John, that have a vision of what their work should look like and how it should be perceived, even if it's at an art fair context. And I think the three works, the three presentations have had that. They're not booths, they're presentations. They are an opportunity for one to encounter the work as it is, as a live being, and not just a frame on the wall with a price tag in the bottom. This is how one needs to encounter art, I think. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have a weird story for you, because I was brought to Basel in 2006 by an Austrian gallery called Ernst Hilger. And I showed first in Art Basel in 06 pieces called Smoke Trees. And we had like a huge success, these works in 06 and 07 before the big crash of 08. And, I was really, let's say, involved. I was there and I was sort of, installing the work and communicating with people. And, I was happy to do that for let's say, some artists that would be obscure. But I never really had a problem with sort of being part of what I call socializing my work. Like, I have this joke I make where people are like, oh, what did you sell? And I say, I didn't sell anything. I socialized it. You left my body and joined your estate. My beloved art left me and joined you. So I socialized things. But, so I'm there in 06. And then strangely enough, let's say around the time of Art Basel, around the time of Western Flag, like 17 in a weird way, kind of the art market, not the biennales, not the museums, but the art market became more conservative. I saw a stronger drift into let's say more analog works, less experimental works presented in commercial settings. And I certainly saw that. I certainly saw that playing out in my own life. So when 010 began to emerge, I really paid close attention. I attended Miami just to witness it. I attended Hong Kong just to witness it. And what was so beautiful was just to meet all my friends there. My friend Kim Assendorf, or my now friends, Andres Giesen or Lenny, or all these people. But Mimi and Alejandro, and everybody was there, and everybody was welcome. It was like this very potent sense of a community, but B, like, just different. It's just different from the sort of the formality that had emerged on the main floor. And I would almost lay a bet that 35 years ago, when Art Basel emerged, it was less formal. I would almost lay a bet. I wasn't there, but like if you go back to Art Basel I think in the 70s, I think there was a lot more artists on the floor, and it was a lot more, I might have even been more fun. And then I think for me the sort of the zenith of this was Art Basel in Switzerland, where it was such a great show. Trevor Paglin and Eli did such a great show. I mean, they were all great shows. Hong Kong was a great show, so was Miami. But Basel, that sense of like, kind of the sort of solid embedding in the historic, I felt was super valuable in that setting. And then that kind of interplay between the more experimental and then in a sense the more established of the digital artists, of which I would obviously be one. And certainly I've been a beneficiary with the wonderful placement of the work in the world. Let's say the powerful socialization of the triptych, which we are here to celebrate just a little bit.
I love the terminology socialization. I'm going to remember this, John. Okay. Let's now talk about 06 and 17 and then 26. So you referenced going to Basel for the first time in 06 and the environment around that. In 2017 in Western Flag, you had mentioned distribution of work on USB stick with documentation. Now here we are. Maybe this is a lead in to something you referenced earlier, the token. Speak to the token itself.
Yeah, well, so, I literally lost my mind after what I call the Beeple bulb. It was like, what the? I was like, because I had actually been on the landscape in China making portraits of Bitcoin, water-powered Bitcoin mines in like 2017, but I still didn't know about NFTs. Like, this guy didn't know about NFTs. So I just didn't know about them. It's weird. I just didn't get it, So like everybody else, apart from, people really kind of more connected than me, the emergence of the art token or the NFT was a kind of real shocker in 21. Not just the scale of the transaction of the everyday, but also just its meaning, that this was both, distributing art and authenticating art simultaneously, and I was like, oh my God, and then I was like, oh God, this is like so significant. And it kind of really, really, really literally kind of blew my mind because it was so global and it was so frictionless. Like, I was like, oh God, like, John, keep it cool, but I actually did release one token shortly afterwards with a different platform, which is now in the collection of Los Angeles County Museum of Art, which was a little 30-second loop out of Western Flag as a kind of, in a way, an experiment, but also a response to the moment. But it was really with Pace Gallery and with Pace Verso that I partnered with Art Blocks to release Petronational in 2022. That was my first big step, which is a project I'm really proud of. It's also in the Pompidou, and I know it's got kind of beloved raster, our favorite raster. It's got a lot of people love this project. I love this project. It's like 100. It's the UN list, 195 countries. Actually, if you click on one, you can go in and see it. It's 195 countries, and if you drag on the actual on the window of the little drip, Roger, you can look around. Yeah, so it's 195 countries realized as drips of gasoline on the world ocean. Each of the country is the shape that it is, and the amount of gasoline it consumes changes the sort of like the color of the gasoline. Whether it's low consumption, it's more greenish, and high consumption, it's more lustrous. So, that was my first kind of release, and then I did World Flag, and I did stuff on Tezos, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, I went into art token, fairly seriously. World Flag was a second one with Art Blocks and Pace Verso, Again, a project I really like. 195 works from the UN list realized as flags of smoke in a future desert. But pertinent to the presentation in 010, and I think it's been acknowledged, by everybody, that pace began to cool on digital some years ago, and about a year ago, we all agreed that I would work independently, and I started to talk in more seriousness with entities such as Fellowship, and as part of that process, I met the wonderful artist 0xFFF, who's a wonderful artist of the smart contract. And he's also an amazing philosopher, actually. And a kind of, he's a sort of a philosopher of the blockchain in a weird way. And also incredibly generous and just a good person. So, when I moved away from working with platforms, he was good enough to write me my contract, basically, which was for a work called Mirror, which is a portrait of a scarab beetle, which is connected to the camera on your phone, so you can see yourself in this beetle on your phone. And then we worked on to make quite a few art tokens together, or contracts together. But funnily enough, of Christmas 2025, I wrote the simplest little line on X. And it was something along the lines of thinking about tokenizing early software, DM for details. 15 minutes later, Neil Hutchinson from Fellowship writes, he said, I need to know all about that. So Neil was the person who really came in and sort of lifted up that concept, and we tokenized Standard and Flare for his collection, and that was the first step, where I took up a historic bit of software, put a beautiful proofing still on the blockchain, put a beautiful temporal video proof in a server, and then didn't expand the edition, but left the paper-based editions where they were, like edition 1, edition 2. But edition 3 would become a token-based edition assigned to that piece of art software. And the final step, which is the most radical step, is that the token gives you access to the server. So it's a token-gated server. So basically, I'm out of the loop. So you get the token, you get the proof, you get the video proof, and you get the software, and I'm out. And I would say, conservatively, it's probably taken the value of these works by a factor of 3, I would say. Like, I don't know, Alejandro might agree or disagree, but, we were in X point, like say 2022 or 2023 with these works. Come through the arc of 010, the emergence of 010 and the kind of and digital art moving back into the frame of the market. I think the assignation of the art, I call it art token, to art software is popping the value by about 3 in the last 6 months.
Alejandro, care to comment there?
Yeah, no, I think this is what's exciting about our space and the opportunities that arise. You get these interactions between collectors, artists, and kind of what John was saying, what Art Basel used to be many years ago. It was fun, and this is what happens when there is a genuine and honest conversations about how do we make it even more impressive for the current moment. What is happening today with technology, with token-based technology, and how does that talk to all that came before? The lineage isn't broken. It's just you need to find how to connect those parts. And what John has done with these art tokens it was a perfect fit. It was meant to be. So we're
Yeah.
excited to be part of that little moment for him. Yeah.
And I would jump in and say, Trevor Paglen's title and Eli Shimon's title of 010, which is, the condition, is a very good one, and it's a very canny one, because what is the defining condition of the now, and in a sense, I think it's, we could argue this out, but I call it data in transit. You could call it the algorithmic, but data in transit is a very, very big deal now. It affects how things are traded, how war is executed. It affects like how cars are driven. It affects all aspects of human existence and non-human existence. I mean, there would be another school of thought that would say that heat or water or these things are the true condition of existence. But in terms of drivers of change, if you're going to pay attention to a driver of change right now, the condition is algorithmic. And ironically and interestingly, some of the great fortunes of the day are made from those who are browser people. I call them like literally browser people or network people, and now AI people. They're all data people. And, I remember first coming across the work of Xcopy, whose work I really like and I really celebrate. And I was like, that's an animated GIF. I was like, oh, I know what that is. And then it was like, oh, it's $1 million animated GIF. And then I was like, like for these people, like this is meaningful for them because they made their fortunes in the browser. I mean, even we started this conversation talking about the shift from, Mosaic into Netscape Navigator, I think.
Yeah.
And I think at one point, like the great browser battle was won by somebody who actually integrated the animated GIF. I mean, I remember this moment, it was like everything was like flashing and jumping. And, somebody probably made $100 million from the animated GIF, so, if they're going to suddenly start collecting art, it may not be a drawing that they collect. They may collect a meaningful GIF, And I guess the great gift of the NFT in the case of Xcopy, but for me, again, I sort of lean into more of this idea of the art token is that it allows those who are very digital to obviously value the digital.
Yeah, in its native form, which is a fascinating thing to think about. Though we are we are committed to the materiality of these works in situ as public works. There is that other layer of the living with these works on the browser, through this space that we're interacting right now. It's an interesting tension, and I think sometimes people don't really grasp that the internet is a place, it's a world, it has history, it has a lineage, it has importance, and it is one of the things that has changed completely our lives. And I think the three of us were part of that generation that saw the before and after, and we are we're suckers to know how much value that has.
Well, I think you have, if you talk about the internet, you have to talk about power.
Yeah.
So Roger, on the subject of power, I said that when I started to kind of run out of steam with my head cold, I would step out. So I think I've reached that line, but it also gives you and Alejandro the opportunity to do a little bit more gallery talk, if you wish, and I can elegantly not be part of it because I don't have to be part of that. It's like I'm like I leave the room, but I just want to say thank you very much, Roger. It's a pleasure to have been part of this, and the hour went by pretty quickly for me. Yeah. I'm surprised. So
that's a good sign, John. I want to leave you with a few things.
Yes.
One, I'm a fan of puns, and I can't let this one lie. You said GIF, and then you said the great gift of I just needed to go back to that. That was class. And then also on the subject of world building, we do have another conversation to have. Hopefully we can have in the coming months. Our history and Artifex's history and sort of what we've been up to on the world building game engines. Shout out to Justin Wetch if he happens to be listening, my partner in Art Crime. And then also the Gaussian splat side of what you were able to execute with LACMA. So these are juicy topics in our world, and I would love to return to those
well, oh my God, don't get me started on Gaussian splats. I mean, you're going to have to book one of those 24-hour famous marathons that you're on. You have no idea how unbelievably good these Gaussian splats are getting right now. It's like shocking. So, and we're coming into the last quarter of the spirits. We're doing the autumn spirits now, which are the Atlantic spirits. So yeah, sign me up.
I love it. Well, I missed you at LACMA by days, from the data land to when you did the wonderful event that we'll talk about later. But for now, John, congratulations to you and Ali. Ali, if you'll stay a few minutes, we can continue jamming for a bit. But congrats to you both, John. You know, especially to you as you exit stage left. Be well. Get that head cold reconciled. We didn't hear 1% of it.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, guys. Good luck, and thank you to everybody in the audience. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, John Gerrard. There he was. And quickly mention the audience. And I think we need to give a great shout out to the hundreds of people now joining us for this. Eva, good morning. Jaleel, who was a guest just a couple weeks ago. Absolutely incredible work. Appreciate you, Jaleel. Wall Plug NFT. Amazing to hear about the meticulous intentionality. And then asterism here. Roger does love a pun, LOL. Yes, I do. I guess my reputation precedes me. Ali, how was that for you? The hour did fly by.
Yeah, it did. Absolutely. When I looked at the clock, I was like, wow. I mean, what can I say? What a privilege to work with artists that have that intentionality and everything is for a reason. I mean, you don't understand how much work it takes to do a presentation like this. It's months of planning, and then on the floor, like every single detail, John was on top of it. The color of the wall, like it wasn't like, oh, here's the paint, boom, you painted and that's it. No, it was like days of work to get to that place. And then the screens, we had the whole China team come from the factory to install the works, and they were there for 3 days painstakingly calibrating everything to make it. I mean, it's really a group effort. I so many people to thank to actually get to where we were. John brought in his whole team too. I mean, it really is a collaboration. Things don't happen. And the irony of things is, oh, it's just a video. You just put it on a screen. Yeah, we don't do that, right? We've seen what that does, and it just doesn't work that way. If you really want digital art to shine, you need to just build so much effort to make it what it needs to be. And there's no coincidence in the presentation. On our side, there's no coincidence on John's creation of the work, what it means, why he did it, how he did it. Everything has meaning. And honestly, for me as an artist, also that's the high. Like, you want to do art that has all these layers, and you'll have, like I mentioned, at the amount of people that came by the booth because of the different parts of the work, because of the screens. Because I mean, we had people just fascinated with the screen. They could not believe the quality of the reproduction of the screen, and that was it. That was their high. They didn't talk about the artwork or what it meant. It was that. And then you had people who were there for minutes and minutes talking about the importance of global warming, the war, all the things that are happening around us. I mean, it was really delightful. And again, as an artist and also as a gallerist, this is what you want people to actually engage with the work. I know that might sound a little bit romantic. It's an art fair. We're supposed to go just to sell work, but to have the opportunity that it is that, but it's also all the other things that art is supposed to do, touch people's minds and hearts. I mean, yeah, that's what we wish for, and I think it happened, and this sale that happened, I think was part of the collector seeing not only it on the phone, but seeing how the object actually manifests itself and how it works once you present it. It's like, oh, this is real. Like, people are confronted with the artwork and are engaging with the work. And I think that was the confidence that they needed to see that, oh, this is real. Like, it's just not an image on the screen. It's a real object. Yeah.
Yeah. Just the absolute milestone. I mean, one thing we didn't, in case anyone is unaware, announced is the sale of that triptych, that very triptych on screen for most of the show for $1.5 million total. An incredible milestone from Art Basel, Switzerland. And so that's lovely to see. And Alejandro, I really enjoyed how the two of you broke down the details of the preparation. Asterism again says the biodegradable natural paint, and Alejandro, Sophia, Fred all killed it. Amazing work, guys. I love that you broke down the details, the float at the base of the wall, the sculptural dimensions of the screen framing, the mat of the screen presentation, the paint, all of these, the showing up 5 days prior to anybody else to have to execute on some of these elements. All of that, I think, yes, the photos look beautiful, but that's an in-person thing.
Yeah.
That you can see something, you can say, hey, that looks like an exceptional shot. You can't feel those things unless you're on site.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember interviewing Holly Herndon and Matt Dryhurst in Berlin a few months back, and they said something that has stuck with me, and they are like, artists at large, including myself, we think about the photo, right? That's how the work is going to circulate. But at the end, if the photo is better than being there, then something's wrong. Something's completely off. And for the 3 presentations that we've done at Basel, if you were there, it was better than the photograph. And that, I think, says a lot of what we're trying to do with the artists that we work with. It's about being there and you feeling, wow, this is an amazing artwork. And I think, I think the proof is in the pudding. It's there. It's the people who saw it can tell you that it was a really good presentation.
Yeah. Well, I'm 1 for 3. I had a chance to depict you. I did that, the people of 010, the first 010 in Miami. I did that series of a lot of the people. Unfortunately, can never capture everyone, but a lot of the people who were in and around. And I remember depicting you in front of the very tall statuesque screen that you had on display there. And what I will say about the 2 that I wasn't there for, you can tell that you don't know what you don't know, but that likely if you were there are other elements to be felt.
Absolutely. I mean, it's Sue Gwen's piece, Eggshell's piece, and now John's. I think they, and I tried to prod John to talk a little bit more about that, but it's about the materiality. Do you understand how to construct the digital work, but do you understand how to conclude a digital work? And that extra step is very important. And I think the results are speaking to that it's not just only the conceptualization of it as a digital object, but as a material object that people can interact with on a one-on-one basis. And I honestly want to thank Eli, Trevor, and the whole Basel team. It's been such a great opportunity it's a challenge, more than opportunity. It's a challenge to how do you make these amazing and important digital works manifest themselves in the best possible way. And the whole team, Fred, Neil, everybody in fellowship is obsessed with this challenge, and we're excited to keep presenting and challenging ourselves to do better every iteration that we present of 010.
Well, it's felt, man. It's felt. And I appreciate you. Originally, once upon a time, I didn't even know if I was going to run a show this week, and how that it had to change. It had to change, and I'm really glad that it did. And always a pleasure to intersect with you. And the same goes, of course, to Neil and Fred, the totality of fellowship, and then John for the first time on the show was a real joy.
Yeah, likewise, Roger. It's been a while. When did I see you last? Was it your birthday? When was that?
It was the Node Punks exhibition.
Yes, exactly.
No one was supposed to know it was my birthday. It wasn't about my birthday. Who did that? Who's responsible for that? Maybe Chikai? I don't know.
Yeah, we were in Shikai's car, I think, and we talked about that.
Yes.
No, it's been thank you for having us and for the opportunity to engage with your community. And we're excited for where things are. We know it's not an easy moment for the whole NFT space, digital art space. So we're feeling absolutely blessed and privileged to have the opportunity to be at 010, and we cherish and we want to deliver. So for the artists, for the collectors, for the community, and I hope we get more opportunities to present the roster of artists that we're working with.
Fantastic. And I know there was some buzz about some gold standard verbiage. I think Radio Solace had a very complimentary post, and then of course the milestone breaks, and I'm sure there's more news to come. Yeah. But congrats to all you guys. And Alejandro, I mean, we since 2023, I believe the first ever that we did was alongside the great Nice Aunties.
Yes.
And then now most recently today with John Gerrard, and many in between, not to the exclusion of anyone. And then I hope it's many more to come. So thank you so much for being here, man.
Likewise. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. There he is, Alejandro Cartagena, co-founder of Fellowship. Phenomenal, by the way. Something we can't always, of course, discuss, but I can say it now, and hopefully he's still listening and his cheeks and ears are burning. But, an exceptional and storied and decades-long art career himself. Was just having a discussion in the 24 Hours of Art Telegram about his art in Madrid. That's a shout out to J Code, talking about being there and being impressed. Talked about others were talking about at the SF MoMA, a mid-career retrospective. So Alejandro Cartagena, plenty going on himself. GM, to all of those joining us and commenting, Art Vault GM, Gold Cat in the house. Great to see you. Phenomenal artwork. Heatwave, live physically and digitally on Super Rare currently. Asterism, oh my God, there's a 24 Hours of Art Telegram. There is indeed. All right. This show, the damn show, presented with, of course, 24 Hours of Art. Yes, but I want to leave a little segment here to talk about who powers this show. And who powers this show is none other than Gandhi. And we have a little bit of breaking news on the Gandhi front. They released a new feature set today. So number one, I mean, I'm overall very complimentary of their build, their continuous build, their iterative build. And here we can pull up Gandhi on the homepage here. There they are. But how about their feature? How about the breaking news? And it is right here. Let's pull it up. Boom, there it is. Introducing Gandhi off-market listings. List your NFT for sale without anyone knowing. Price lives off-chain, invisible to everyone but you. So the cool thing is they're building these features that allow collectors to behave how collectors wish to behave, and giving them options, as it were. Now, obviously, listen, raising my hand, everyone loves a public listing. Why? Because it's easier to report on. Sometimes it's not as easy to report on, and that's okay. That is a feature, not a bug, and many different people are going to wish to behave in many different ways. And so basically how it works is you list something wherever you desire to list it, but nobody can see that thing attached to your edition or your specific artwork. The only place they can see it would be Gandhi's home or the collection home, but unattached to that specific edition. Then if there is an offer, it could be a collection offer, an item offer, or any form of an offer. If it meets or exceeds, then it automatically executes. So it allows, the collector to keep all of everything private. They may wish to do so for their own reasons, of course. They may wish to do so because they're thinking about the market surrounding that artwork or surrounding that artist, and they view that as a good thing to keep it on the down low. And then if there's a match, there's a match. And so, like Gandhi clarifies here, it works with all of their loan infrastructure and functionality, sell and repay works, et cetera, et cetera. And I do have a message, and this is fun. Some notable off-market listings worth highlighting right now include Abatogenesis work, The Doomed, No Future, and New Teeth 2033, all by Xcopy, of course, and Last Orders by ACK, the great Alpha Centauri kid. So how about that? There's a list of this feature being used right as it launches. So there it is. They power the damn show. So of course, we want to carve out some time to talk about their builds and their feature set. And that's what it is. Launched just this morning, off-market listings. Have a look. All right, everybody, listen. Wasn't planning on running a show this week. Had to do it. I think now you understand why. Had the great honor, thank you for the trust, something I didn't have a chance to say earlier. Thank you for the trust of fellowship. And of course, John Gerrard being able to talk about the sale of that triptych and then break out into this wonderful hour-long conversation. It was really enjoyable. We will be back next week for a very special show on Monday. I'm not quite ready to say who it is, but be ready. How about that? I'll leave you with that. So again, 1 week from today, Monday, July, I can get the date right here. Monday, July 13th, we will be back on the damn show. Small possibility we do something surprise before that. But right now, I want you to focus on Monday, July 13th. Flag it. Final GMs, everybody again joining us. Thank you for being here. As always, Stephen Miller, appreciate you. Dalos, appreciate you. And thank you. All right, that's it. We are the Digital Art Market Show, the damn show. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.